Good morning. I am Journey Loves Austria and I will be reporting Lesson 9 Managing and Caring for the Self. Learning Objectives. By the end of this module, students will have completed the following objectives: 1. Explain how learning occurs. 2. Enumerate various metacognition and studying techniques. 3. Identify the metacognitive techniques that you find most appropriate for yourself. 4. Explain the effects of stress to one's health. 5. Examine cultural dimension of stress and coping. 6. Design self-care plan. Course content. Knowing the self is not enough. Since who you are is partly made up of your choices, you must also have the ability to choose, especially to be better you. In the school setting, your knowledge of yourself should at least enable you to become a better student. This lesson will present several techniques that you can adopt depending on your situation and preferences to make you a better learner. Learning should not just mean studying for your quizzes and exams in school. Learning could also occur outside the confines of a book or classroom, like when you want to acquire a new move in your favorite sport or the skills for a certain hobby, among others. Furthermore, the techniques here are not the only techniques available in months or years from now. New ways on how to study better will be discovered or rediscovered. What is important at this moment is that you learn how to learn these things. We are Homo sapiens, or the wise man. We think in a more complex level than our ancestors and most, if not all, of the other beings. But being called wise, not only do we think, but we are also capable to think about thinking, like how we think of things and why we think in a certain way about things. It is like your brain thinks about itself, then thinks about how it thinks about itself. In the context of learning, studies show that when you are able to think about how you think, how you process information, and how you utilize techniques while you are studying, you have a higher chance of improving your learning process than those who do not reflect on their methods. This idea falls under the concept of metacognition. Metacognition, commonly defined as thinking about thinking, as per described by Livingstone in 1997 and Papalonoloka in 2003. It is the awareness of the scope and limitations of your pure knowledge and skills by Meishan-Bohm in 1985 in American Institutes of Research 2010. Due to this awareness, metacognition enables the person to adapt their existing knowledge and skills to approach a learning task, seeking for the optimum result of the learning experience. American Institutes for Research in 2010. Metacognition is also not limited to think process of the individual. It also includes keeping one's emotion and motivations while learning in check. Some people learn better when they are challenged by the topic, and others if they have a reward system each time they finish a task. The emotional state and the motivation of a person then should also be in the preferred ideal state for that person in order to further facilitate his or her learning. As seen from the above mentioned definitions, metacognition basically has two aspects: one, self-appraisal, and two, self-management or cognition. As per said by Paris and Winograd in 1990 in Papelonshuloka in 2003. Self-appraisal is your personal reflection on your knowledge and capabilities, while self-management is the mental process you employ using what you have in planning and adapting to successfully learn or accomplish a certain task. Similar concepts, usually called elements of metacognition, are metacognitive knowledge or what you know about how you think, and metacognition regulation or how you adjust your thinking process to help you learn better. Under metacognitive knowledge, there are several variables that affect how you know or assess yourself as a thinker. First is the personal variable, which is your evaluation of your strengths and weaknesses in learning. Second is the task variable, which is what you know or what you think about the nature of the task, as well as what strategies the task requires. Lastly, strategy variable refers to what strategies or skills you have already named in dealing with certain tasks. However, it must be Note that in order to make self appraisal and self management work, you must have an accurate self assessment. You must be honest and what you know and capable of in order to find ways to utilize your strengths and improve on your weaknesses. According to Waterloo Student Success Office, the following are other skills that can help you in exercising metacognition. First is knowing your limits. As I mentioned earlier, one cannot really make any significant advancement in using metacognitive skills without having an honest and accurate evaluation of what you know and what you do not know. Knowing meta Knowing your limits also looks at the scope and limitations of your resources so that you can work with what you have at the moment and look for ways to cope with other necessities. Second is modifying your approach. It begins with the recognition that your strategy is not appropriate with the task and or that you do not comprehend the learning experience successfully. Recognizing, for example, that you are not understanding what you are reading. You should learn to modify your strategy in comprehending your material. You might want to read a page in 5-minute intervals instead of trying to finish the material in one sitting. You may want to make a summary or code for yourself instead of using keywords or highlighting sections of what you are reading. Third is skimming. This is basically browsing over a material and keeping an eye on keywords, phrases, or sentences. It is also about knowing where to search for such key terms. For example, you might want to look at the introduction first or the abstract. The table of contents can also provide you with quick guide to the contents of the book. Introductory paragraphs, headings or subheadings, and conclusions can also provide you with an overview of the whole material. This technique works best when you want to get an idea about the contents of a reading material when you are trying to read through several materials in a limited time frame or when you want to focus on a certain details among others. Four is rehearsing. This is not just about repeatedly talking, writing, and or doing what you have learned, but also trying to make a personal interpretation or summary of the learning experience. One of the fun ways to do this is by imagining yourself being interviewed about your task. As you try to convey what you have learned from the resources, you also insert your opinions or other personal take on the matter. Just be sure that the key concepts are well understood and are still in line with the source material even with multiple rehearsals. 5 is self-test. As the name implies, this is trying to test your comprehension of your learning experience or the skills you have acquired during learning. While some materials already come with tests like this book, you can still create tests for yourself. You can make essay questions or definition of terms tests while you are reading or watching a material. You can challenge yourself in completing a task successfully, maybe in a given period of time. As you may have noticed already, the goal of metacognition for the student is to be a self-regulated learner. Education should not be limited by the capabilities of the teacher, the content of school textbooks, the four corners of the classroom, and the duration of the academic year or courses. You should have the capability to study things on your own as well as accurately evaluate your progress. This is one of the benefits of using metacognitive techniques and strategies. Another benefit is the compensation and development of cognitive limitations of the learner because the student is now aware of his or her capabilities. Various researches also showed significant improvement in academic performance in any subject and across age range. The student is also enabled to transfer knowledge from one context into another. Other tips that you can use in studying are the following. First is make an outline of the things you want to learn, the things you are reading or doing, and or the things you remember. Second is break down the task in smaller and more manageable details. Third is integrate variation in your schedule and learning experience. Change reading material every hour and do not put similar topics together. Next is try to incubate your ideas. First, write your draft without doing much editing. Let the ideas flow, then leave your draft at least overnight or around 24 hours. Some even do not look at it for a week and do something else. After a given period, go back to your draft prototype, and you might find a fresh perspective about it. Sometimes, during incubation, you suddenly have ideas coming to you. Write them down in a notebook first and do not integrate them into the draft yet. Review what you have written when the incubation period is done. Next is revise, summarize, and take down notes. Then reread them to help you minimize cramming in the last minute, especially when you have a weakness in memorizing facts and data. Some people are motivated when the deadline is very close, tomorrow for instance, and they just review the day before some evaluation or exercise. If you are that kind of person, you may still motivate yourself and have that feeling of urgency at the last minute, but by using the above aforementioned techniques, your cramming need not be a desperate attempt to learn, but only as a way to energize your brain as you make a final review of the things you have already been studying for a week or so before. Last is to engage what you have learned. Do something about it. On a reading material, for example, highlight keywords and phrases. Write your opinions about the matter on a separate notebook or create a diagram or concept map. Some people also learn best by copying the key paragraphs word for word. You may want to look for other definitions and compare or contrast materials. Use your new knowledge during discussions, just do something about it. As you were reading this topic, were you are aware of your metacognitive process? What changes did you feel as you tried to use the metacognitive strategies and skills? We encourage you to utilize and adopt the aforementioned techniques in whatever learning experiences you are about to accomplish and find enjoyment in success in learning. Stress. The American Psychological Association has these statements about stress. Stress is often described as a feeling of being overwhelmed, worried, or run down. Stress can affect people of all ages, genders, and circumstances and can lead to both physical and psychological health issues. By definition, stress is any uncomfortable emotional experience accompanied by predictable biochemical, physiological, and behavioral changes. Some stress can be beneficial at times, producing a boost that provides the drive and energy to help people get through situations like exams or work deadlines. However, an extreme amount of stress can have health consequences and adversely affect the immune, cardiovascular, neuroendocrine, and central nervous systems. Since stress is inevitable to life, we have to learn how to handle and cope up with it. More so, we have to be familiar with other approach to a healthy lifestyle, which is self-care. Stress and human response. The American Institute of Stress has it distinguished different types of stress and the human response to it. Hans Selye defines stress as the body's non-specific response to any demand, whether it is caused by or results in pleasant or unpleasant stimuli. It is essential to differentiate between the unpleasant or harmful variety of stress, termed distress, which often connotes disease, and eustress, which often connotes euphoria. Eustress is stress in daily life that has positive connotations such as marriage, promotion, baby, winning money, new friends, and graduation. On the other hand, distress is any stress in daily life that has negative connotations such as divorce, punishment, injury, negative feelings and financial problems, and work difficulties. During both youth stress and distress, the body undergoes virtually the same non-specific responses to the various positive or negative stimuli acting upon on it. However, eustress causes much less damage than distress. This demonstrates conclusively that it is how an individual accepts stress that determines ultimately whether the person can adapt successfully to change. Selye hypothesized a general adaptation or stress syndrome. This general stress syndrome affects the whole body. Stress always manifests itself by the syndrome, a sum of changes, and not by simply one change. The general stress syndrome has three components. First is the alarm stage. First is the alarm stage. Represents a mobilization of the body's defensive forces. the body is preparing for the fight or flight syndrome. This involves a number of hormones and chemicals excreted at high levels, as well as an increase in heart rate, blood pressure, perspiration, and respiration rate, among others. Next is the stage of resistance. The body becomes adaptive to the challenge and even begins to resist it. The length of this stage of resistance is dependent upon the body's innate and stored adaptation energy, reserves and upon the intensity of the stressor. Just as any machine wears out even if it has been properly maintained, the same thing happens with living organisms. Sooner or later, they become the victim of this constant wear and tear process. The acquired adaptation is lost if the individual is subject to still greater exposure to the stressor. The organism then enters into the third and final stage, the exhaustion stage. The body dies because it has used up its resources of adaptation energy. Thankfully, few people ever experience this last stage. Stress diseases are maladies caused principally by errors in the body's general adaptation process. They will not occur when all the body's regulatory processes are properly checked and balanced. They will not develop when adaptation is facilitated by improved perception interpretation. The biggest problems when derailing the general stress syndrome and causing disease is an absolute excess, deficiency, or disequilibrium in the amount of adaptive hormones. For example, corticoids, adrenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH, and growth hormones and produced during stress. Unfortunately, if stress is induced chronically, our defense response lowers its resistance since fever antibodies are produced and an inflammatory response dwindles. AIS 27. In the article Understanding Stress Response of the Health Harvard Journal, it further discussed chronic stress and human body response. Chronic stress is unpleasant, even when it is transient. A stressful situation, whether something environmental, such as looming work deadline, or psychological, such as persistent worry about losing a job, can trigger a cascade or stress hormones that produce well orchestrated physiological changes. Stressful incident can make the heart pound and breathing quicken. Muscles tense and beads of sweat appear. This combination of reactions to stress is also known as the fight or flight response because it evolved as a survival mechanism, enabling people and other mammals to react quickly to life-threatening situations. The carefully orchestrated yet near instantaneous sequence of hormonal changes and physiological yet responses help someone to fight threat off to flee to safety. Unfortunately, the body can also overreact to stressors that are not life-threatening, such as traffic jams, work pressure, and family difficulties. Over time, repeated activation of the stress response takes a toll on the body. Research suggests that chronic stress contributes to a high blood pressure, promotes the formation of artery clogging deposits, and causes brain changes that may contribute to anxiety, depression, and addiction. More preliminary research suggests that chronic stress may also contribute to obesity, both through direct mechanisms causing people to eat more or indirect decreasing and sleep exercise. The stress response begins in the brain. When someone confronts on an oncoming car or the other danger, the eyes or ears send the information to the amygdala, an area of the brain that contributes an emotional processing. The amygdala interprets the images and sounds. When it perceives danger, it instantly sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. When someone experiences a stressful event, the amygdala, an area of the brain that contributes to emotional processing, sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. This area of the brain functions like a command center, communicating with the rest of the body through the nervous system so that the person has the energy to fight or flee. The hypothalamus is a bit like a command center. This area of the brain communicates with the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary body functions like breathing, blood pressure, heartbeat, and the dilation of constriction of key blood vessels and small airways in the lungs called bronchioles. The autonomic nervous system has two components like sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system functions like a gas pedal in a car. It triggers the fight or flight response, providing the body with a burst of energy so that it can respond to perceived dangers. The parasympathetic nervous system act, acts like a brake. It promotes the rest and digest response that calms the body down after the danger has passed. After the amygdala sends a distress signal, the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system by sending signals through the autonomic nerves to the adrenal glands. These glands respond by pumping the hormone epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, into the bloodstream. As epinephrine circulates through the body, it brings on a number of physiological changes. The heart beats up faster than normal, pushing blood to the muscles, heart, and other vital organs. Pulse rate and blood pressure go up. The person undergoing these changes also starts to breathe more rapidly. Small airways in the lungs open wide. This way, the lungs can take as much as oxygen as possible with each breath. Extra oxygen is sent to the brain, increasing alertness. Sight, hearing, and other senses become sharper. Meanwhile, epinephrine triggers the release of blood sugar or glucose and fats from temporary storage sites in the body. These nutrients flood into the bloodstream, supplying energy to all parts of the body. All of these changes happen so quickly that people are not aware of them. In fact, the wiring is so efficient that the amygdala and hypothalamus starts this cascade even before the brain's visual centers have had a chance to fully process what is happening. That is why people are able to jump out of the path an incoming car even before they think about what they are doing. As the initial surge of epinephrine subsides, the hypothalamus activates the second component of the stress response system known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal or HPA axis. This network consists of the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. The HPA axis relies on a series of hormonal signals to keep the sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal, pressed down. If the brain continues to perceive something as dangerous, the hypothalamus releases corticotropin releasing hormone or CRH, which travels to the pituitary gland, triggering the release of ACTH. This hormone travels to the adrenal glands, prompting them to release cortisol. The body thus stays revved up on the high alert. When the threat passes, cortisol levels fall. The parasympathetic nervous system, the brake, then dampens the stress response. Persistent epinephrine surges can damage blood vessels and arteries, increasing blood pressure and raising risk or heart attacks or strokes. Elevated cortisol levels creates physiological changes that help to replenish the body's energy stores that are depleted during the stress response, but they are inadvertently contribute to the buildup of fat tissue and to weight gain. For example, cortisol increases appetite so that people will want to more to obtain extra energy. It also increases storage of unused nutrients as fat. Chronic low level stress keeps the HPA axis activated, much like a motor that is idling too high for too long. After a while, this has an effect of the body that contributes to the health problems associated with chronic stress. Techniques to counter chronic stress. Several techniques to counter chronic stress were presented in the same article, Health Harvard 2017. First is the relaxation response. Dr. Herbert Benson, Director Emeritus of the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, has devoted much of his career to learning how people can encounter the stress response by using a combination of approaches that elicit the relaxation response. These include deep abdominal breathing, focus on a soothing word such as peace or calm, visualization of tranquil scenes, repetitive prayer, yoga, and tai chi. Second is the physical activity. People can use exercise to stifle the body buildup of stress in several ways. Exercise, such as taking a brisk walk shortly after feeling stressed, not only deepens breathing but also helps relieve muscle tension. Movement therapy, such as yoga, tai chi, and qigong, combine with fluid movements with deep breathing and mental focus, all of which can induce calm. Third is the social support. Confidants, friends, acquaintances, co-workers, relatives, spouses, and companions all provide a life-enhancing social net and may increase longevity. It is not clear why, but the buffering theory holds that people who enjoy close relationships with family and friends receive emotional support that indirectly helps to sustain them at times of chronic stress and crisis. Self-care therapy. A positive way to counter stress is self-care therapy. Nancy Apperson, in 2008 of Northern Illinois University, has provided steps for self-care. First is stop, breathe, and tell yourself, this is hard and I will get through this one step at a time. During an unexpected event or crisis, we are faced with dealing with a new reality, and it takes time to incorporate what happened into our everyday lives. Identify the steps you need to take first, write them down, and focus on each step at a time. If you look at everything you have to do, you will become overwhelmed. Remember, you can only do one thing at a time and focus exclusively on that one thing. Second is to acknowledge to yourself what you are feeling. All feelings are normal, so accept whatever you are feeling. Once you recognize, name, and accept your feelings, you feel less out of control. You can then find a comfortable place to express your feelings. During periods of extreme stress and grief, it is very hard to hold back your feelings, particularly your tears and anger. This is normal to so describe this as grieving or sadness or anger. You are not falling apart. You are grieving or feeling angry or sad. It is important during these times of intense feelings to own your feelings and not hurt yourself as lash out at someone else. Third is to find someone who listens and is accepting. You do not need advice, you need to be heard. Sharing our story is how we begin to accept whatever happened and integrate it in our new reality. It may be that you just need to let go of your expectations of how things should be, and talking about your feelings and beliefs is the beginning of the process. Fourth is maintain your normal routine as much as possible. Making everyday decisions, deciding to get dressed, doing the dishes, or getting to work gives you a sense of control and feels comforting as it is a familiar activity. Be realistic with what you can do and remember everything right now will take you longer to do. Avoid making major decisions based on the stress you feel right now. Next is to apply Next is to allow plenty of time for a task. You will not be as productive as you normally are. Accept how much you are able to do right now and recognize it will not be this way forever. During periods of extreme stress, prolonged stress, or after a crisis, your ability to concentrate and focus on tasks is diminished, and it will take time for your concentration to return. So give yourself extra time and be gentle and accepting of yourself and what you can do. Six is to take good care of yourself. Remember to get enough rest and sleep. Sleep at least 6 hours and not more than 9 hours. If you are having difficulty sleeping, listen to peaceful or slow music and or do progressive relaxation before you go to sleep. Sleep helps our body heals and strengthens our immune system. Eat regularly and make healthy choices. Skipping meals, particularly breakfast, contributes to fatigue, mood swings, and poor concentration. Healthy food choices, not high in simple sugars, maintain blood sugar level, energy, and concentration of the body. Know your limits and when you need to let go. Some problems are beyond our control. If something cannot be changed, work at accept work at accepting it for what it is. Resist the urge to fix the unfixable or try to control the uncontrollable. Sometimes a mantra helps. It is what it is. I just need to accept it. For things within your control, remember that change takes time. If you are holding on and need to let go, journal about it. Identify or create a nurturing place in your home. A rocking chair, a nice view, and the soothing music are important components to a nurturing place. 20 minutes of spending in a rocking chair reduces both your physical pain and anxiety. It is like giving yourself a hug. Music and nature sounds nurture our being and lifts our spirits. Next is practice relaxation or meditation. Go to your nurturing place, listen to guided relaxation tapes. Time spent in meditation or prayer allows your mind and body to slow down and let go of the stress. Take a mental vacation in the midst of stress by relaxing your body, shutting your eyes, and visualizing yourself in your favorite vacation spot or quiet haven. Last is escape for a while through meditation, reading a book, watching a movie, or taking a short trip. Self compassion therapy. Self compassion is another way to counter stress. Christine Neff in 2012 has discussed self compassion in her article, The Science of Self Compassion. Self compassion entails being warm and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than flagellating ourselves with self criticism. It recognizes that being imperfect and experiencing life difficulties is inevitable. So we to soothe and nurture ourselves when confronting our pain, than getting angry when life falls short of our ideals. We clearly acknowledge our problems and shortcomings without judgment, so we can do what is necessary to help ourselves. We cannot always get what we want. We cannot always be want to be. When this reality is denied or resisted, suffering arises in who the form of stress, frustration, and self-criticism. When this reality is accepted with benevolence, however, we generate positive emotions on kindness and care that help us cope. Self compassion recognizes that life challenges and personal failures are part of being human, an experience we all share. In this way, it helps us to feel less desolate and isolated when we are in pain. Self compassion praises. Neff provided self compassion phrases when feeling stress or emotional pain. Perhaps, when you are caught in a traffic jam, arguing with a loved one, or feeling inadequate in some way, it is helpful to have a set of phrases memorized to help you remember to be more compassionate to yourself in the moment. You can take a deep breath, put your hand over your heart, or gently hug yourself. If you feel comfortable doing so, and repeat the following phrases. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. May I give myself the compassion I need. These phrases captures the essence of the three components of self-compassion. The first phrases helps to mindfully open to the sting of emotional pain. You can also just simply say this is really hard right now or this hurts. The second phrase reminds us that suffering unites all living beings and reduces the tendency to feel ashamed and isolated when things go wrong in our lives. The third phrase begins the process of responding with self-kindness rather than self-criticism. The final phrase reinforces the idea that you both need and deserve compassion in difficult moments. Be experimental with the phrases. Other phrases that may feel more authentic in a given situation are, may I accept myself as I am, may I forgive myself, or may I learn to accept what I cannot change. Self-compassionate letter. An example of a self-compassionate exercise is the self-compassionate letter. This exercise has been used in therapeutic programs. Below are steps in doing the self-compassionate letter exercises, as provided by Neff in 2012. Candidly describe a problem that tends to make you feel bad about yourself, such as a physical flaw, a a problem, or failure at work or school. Note what emotions come up: shame, anger, sadness, fear as you write. Next, think of an imaginary friend who is unconditionally accepting and compassionate. Someone who knows all your strengths and weaknesses, understands your life history, your current circumstances, and understands the limits of human nature. Finally, write a letter to yourself from that perspective. What would your friend say about your perceived problem? What words would he or she use to convey your deep compassion? How would your friend remind you that you are only human? If your friend were to make any suggestions, how would they reflect unconditional understanding? When you are done writing, put the letter down for a while and come back to it later. Then read the letter again, letting the words sink in, allowing yourself to be soothed and comforted. Less stress, care more. We should be in control of the stress that confronts us every day. Otherwise, when we are overwhelmed by stress, it can be detrimental to our health. Self care and self compassion are two ways to positively confront stress. We should love and care for ourselves more each day. That would be all. Thank you.